So it turns out that this isn't the first lecture today called Architecture and Memory. I don't know if he's here, but we have a classmate named Elihu Rubin, who's yes. Anyway, so he's this big superstar architecture professor now. They got a lecture, a real lecture, this morning called Architecture and Memory. But it turns out old habits die hard. And here we are 20 years later, and I slept through the lecture. So you'll have to bear with me. Look, you're a better person than me. Thank you for coming. Oh wow. So yes, I'm the top of the 90s. And that's the name of my company. But yes, here we are 20 years later, and yeah, it happened very quickly. And so in the weeks leading up to today, I thought a lot about the passage of time, how it speeds up and slows down, and it's really kind of in the eye of the beholder. So I thought today I would share with you some work that I've done, in which you can actually use architecture and design to explore the passage of time. Here we are, in most human habitations in this world, especially the big ones, especially like places like New York, let's say, right? We have a human settlement that's built on top of an older one, that's built on top of an older one, built on top of an older one. It's a city on top of a city, like a giant layered cake of strata and history. Actually, the way they do a lot of archaeology in the Middle East, they look for hills, right? Tel, Amarna, Shatal is the Turkish word for it, right? And this is how they find the traces of history. It's a physical representation of the passage of time. And so we take a place like, let's say, New York. We're very forward-looking, and we often don't notice the fact that we've left all these vestiges behind of the city that once was. Every once in a while, a layer of the onion will peel back, and we'll see little details that remind us of the history of the people that came before us. And if you know where to look, you can find all sorts of interesting things. And if you really are into this kind of thing, you can do this sort of thing. And I actually did that back in 2007 and found this place, right? This is a former trolley terminal underneath the foot of the Williamsburg Bridge in Manhattan. And it's just been hiding down there for decades since it fell into disuse. And so the last really 10 years of my life, I've been still working on a project to try and re-remind New Yorkers and actually other people in this world that these wonderful little secrets still exist in this world. And so what was once this, right? We can transform into something that people can actually access. It's almost a reminder that it's there. And so, in order to do this, I invented a new technology that allows you to sort of take laboratory-style optics and explode them in scale in order to channel natural sunlight into a sort of a super concentrated little beam of almost like you can sort of turn light into a liquid and send it through plumbing. And once you've done that, you can channel it into all sorts of weirdo places, like for example, embed a trolley terminal, and use that to then create an underground park. So this is not only a method of creating a sort of a futuristic urban space, but it's also a means of sort of unlocking our past and sort of literally shedding light on a long forgotten space. And in terms of the way that I've conceptualized it, we're literally peeling back that sidewalk to expose all the various strata and layers of the city that have come before us, ultimately creating a space that is sort of a fusion of sort of the future and the deep past of our city. So that's just one. I'm actually going to talk about 4 projects. So fast forward a little bit to a more recent design that we've done on the banks of the Thames River. This site is actually a 70s or 60s era brutalist building, a giant one, built on top of the remains of a ducal palace, which is built on top of the remains of a Roman bath ruin, which is built on top of the remains of an Anglo-Saxon settlement, which is built on top of basically where the old Thames River used to be, the banks of the Thames River. And so the idea here is that we can actually cut a sort of a diagonal slot, very simple gesture actually, that slices through all those strata of history in order to sort of unlock them and re-expose them to the public. And this has a practical purpose too. It brings in light and air and functions as a circulation space. But at the same time, it's a gentle reminder that the city that you see on the surface isn't all there is to it. There are so many ages that have come before us. And hopefully it gives people just a second to pause and think about that for a second. So, again, slicing through it. Oh, this is kind of cool. As you slice through the hillside, it used to be the banks of the Thames River. The plantings gradually changed because, look, before the Romans came, they had very different plants that existed in London, the place that became London, than exists right now. So it's very subtle, but it is a sort of a journey through the history of the city. Now, taking a step in the other direction, more recently, I started to think about, hey, you know what if we, okay, I got you. What if we take that actual timeline and flip it over and look at it in reverse? Here's the present, and we're using architecture and design to explore the past. What is it like if we start with the present and just conjecture as to what's going to happen in the future, right? And without knowing the specifics of it, let's talk about the fact that ultimately, everything anyone, any civilization, any human ever builds eventually falls into ruin and gets devoured by nature, right? And so, on the one hand, we have this civilizational urge to tame nature, to really subdue it, and in our current Anthropocene age, really just to kind of completely destroy it, right? And at the same time, nature, we know, will ultimately win the final battle and take all of us over, right? And so, we have a tension that exists between the man-made and nature, really in almost kind of sort of a post-apocalyptic way. And that's something that I've explored in a couple projects, including, well, let's see. Oh, that's one of my favorite projects. This is Home Monkeys, where nature really, really, really wins, right? That's something I explored in an installation piece I built in New York, in which I sort of channeled sunlight via these devices down into an abandoned warehouse in order to create this really almost sort of post-human growth installation piece in an attempt really to try and reconcile human intervention in nature, the power of nature to sort of overgrow and take over what is built by humans, and actually create or foster some sort of level of balance where we can actually use this as something to enjoy and something to actually inhabit. And that's something that I've extended even further. This is a piece I did for the Seoul Biennale, which actually, in almost kind of a Rube Goldberg way, takes a rather expensive piece of advanced futuristic optics and channels that sunlight down to really just a crack in a piece of concrete. And by just sort of engineering and controlling the elements of nature, we're able to sort of actually create this little growth, right, where nature is actually reintroduced into the man-made. And so, as we engage in this process of wholesale destruction of our future and our environment, and sort of oppose ourselves really to the forces of nature that will ultimately take over everything, it's my hope that we can sort of foster some sort of balance between the two. And ultimately, the choice is ours. Right? Thanks.